I think we all get that right, the note. So
Yeah, I can do it. So everybody will get the note that I'm recording it. And this way, if someone asks for it, we can post it. I'll have it on my computer and I can convert it. I can send to you via WeTransfer or something like that.
okay, yeah, no, absolutely. That's, I mean, it's, as we know, the public is invited, so from my perspective, it's just fine. How are you? Are you traveling a lot these days?
Me? Yeah, I am. So I'm here for a little bit, gone. I was traveling last couple of weeks, but things will maybe in March. You know, March I'm still traveling. By April. No, traveling again in April. So
Do you ever get to enjoy the places you go? Or not really?
I'll get a day off every once in a while. I was in Tampa, like at Clearwater. I got to spend a day in Clearwater without anything to do on a weekend. I
Okay.
rather would have been in New York though.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, I'm sure. When you're on the road that much, I'm sure.
Yeah. There's nothing more exciting than Bentonville, Arkansas.
Okay. Actually,
But if you haven't been to the Crystal Springs Museum in Bentonville, you haven't been to the museum.
my mother-in-law and I actually have discussed going down there. It is supposed to be beautiful, right? The setting and everything.
Yeah, it's the Ozarks and it's a one of a kind museum
Really?
because they literally put a Frank Lloyd Wright house on their campus, and it was built by the Walmart family, and it's free, and there's 6 Whitney-sized galleries, you know.
Wow.
I mean, and it's just filled with American art, a lot of Native American art and original like 19th century American artists. It blew me away. But anyway.
Yeah, I would like to do that actually. And then there's when I was looking it up for my mother-in-law last year, there's apparently like one of the towns near there is a bachelor and bachelorette fun spot.
Yeah, yes. I had a crew that went there for the weekend.
Okay.
I forget the name of it, but it's like a 30-40 minute drive from
Right, that's right, exactly. I was kind of like, huh. Not that I was planning to go with my mother-in-law, but
So if everyone can press the attendance link before we start and then fill in your names, that would be great. I think I successfully changed the date today, and that would be terrific. Yeah. See, it's really quick. That's how long it takes. See, it's really quick. Is that me like reverbing
Apologies, I'm
myself?
not there yet.
Okay. Sorry, was that Tammy?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just not like here yet. So give me a sec.
Is it in the chat, Dan? Where is it?
Yeah, it is. It's in the chat. But if you didn't get here yet, it's possible that I think the chat needs to refresh every time somebody joins. So I'm going to just go ahead. It's also in the agenda. And then I will also put the agenda back in.
It's up now.
Jeffrey's going to be in the background. He's not going to be visible. I think he has another meeting as well. So. And here I'm going to give the agenda. Again, I'll probably do it a few times. There you go. 1 second.
Yeah, apologies, but I've got Richard Corman, and I'm not sure if Andrew's over there or not. In the CB1 meeting, I was there and then boogied out.
Yeah, Richard wrote and said he'll be here for the March meeting, but is unable to be here for this one. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Hey, Dan. I'm great.
Hey there. And Brad, thanks for joining us. I can recognize that you're going to be talking to us about the Apollonia later today. Yeah,
that is correct. Great to be here.
Perfect. If you haven't done so already, I will keep copying the attendance form in the chat. So everybody can go ahead and let us know they're here. Oops. Here it is again. That's the attendance link. And then as people join, I'll keep putting in the agenda. Apologies if it's up like 10 times for some folks. But we're getting close to kicking off. We'll wait a couple more minutes. '23. Probably wait till we have about 26. Great, there's Tracy. Okay, we probably can start now. For those of just joining, if you don't mind logging in and pressing the link that I'm about to paste in for the attendance, just go ahead and fill that out. I'll also drop the agenda in one more time. Sign in is also available there, as is our agenda items for today. Okay. And then I'll mention it one more time, but I think we can begin the meeting. Thank you, Michael Wiggins, again for doing the minutes and thank you, Tammy, for hosting and leading the last meeting. I hope everybody had an opportunity to quickly glance at it. I really didn't change much except for Graham's spelling of his name, which is Graeme. But other than that, it looked pretty good to me. So
Great job, Michael.
yeah, you really are great, Michael. You're so good that I think, you know.
I'm sorry, Graham. I apologize.
He's so good at it that I'm thinking that, if I wouldn't get into trouble with Coy, I'd be like taking him out to lunch every month so he would take the minutes for me. I'm just saying.
So that being said,
We could all take turns.
for those who are joining us, please go ahead and look at the agenda that I sent earlier, or you probably can't see the chat. So I'm going to paste in the attendance. If you could go ahead and make sure that your presence has been noted. Now that the meeting is it's commencing. I'd like to hear if anybody has any issues with the minutes. Otherwise, I'd like a motion for the floor to approve the December 13th, 2023 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the December 13th, 2023? Yes. A second?
Second.
A second.
Any abstentions, recusals, denials of it? No, seeing none. December 13th minutes of 2022, which is a typo here, are approved. And thank you again, Michael Wiggins. I don't know if we have Will Benish yet. He's joined us yet, but it's a little bit early for Will if he's here yet, because we're cruising through. He did want to start early. But one of the things that we're setting the table for, I'm just going to go ahead and text him and let him know that we're ready to go. So he texted me. Okay, 1 second. But I know, Tom, you wanted to also set the table on what's happening with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Sure.
And yeah, and then William, just to let you know, William is ultimately going to recant the resolution that was being submitted for CB2 for the month of February. But go ahead, Tom.
Sure. I mentioned this briefly last time. The Army Corps of Engineers proposal is kind of a ham-handed approach to engineering approach to the west side. And there are 3 major issues that we're dealing with here. Resiliency. We are trying to restore the estuary, and we can't restore the estuary without clean water. And there's 33 sewer outfalls going into our estuary. And we've all recognized that the highway is not really designed for micromobility vehicles and the current configuration of the west side. So my thought was that just like they did in the 1980s, when the governor and the mayor took another ham-handed approach to engineering called Westway, which failed after an 11-year legal battle, which this would probably roll into something similar. Um, they should probably preempt this and set up a task force like they did in the 1980s, which took 2 years, came up with a design that we're living with today, a park, a boulevard, piers restored, the estuary saved. Because we have to coordinate U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which was the primary back then, with City and State Department of Transportation regarding the roadway, which were the primary principals back then, as well as DEC and DEP. And I believe that if the governor and the mayor took the lead and said, look, there are 3 major issues that will basically finish out the redevelopment of the West Side. We've got the park, we've got a roadway instead of a highway, and now resiliency, stop the stormwater, and redesign the roadway so it meets today's needs. So I would like to suggest to the advisory council that a brief, I don't know how I do this, Dan. I have a little 2-paragraph proposed resolution that would be encouraging the governor and the mayor to establish a task force that could coordinate future approach to West Side to deal with the issue of resiliency, the highway design that everybody's talked about, and restoration of the estuary by stopping the stormwater overflow.
Did you
I
emailed
have
it?
it as
You
a
want to
Word
email? Have it in?
document.
Do you have it in a Word doc, and I can just share it, and then we can read through it?
Yes, I do. It's on my desktop now. How do I get it to you?
Email it.
Email.
Yep.
Okay. All righty. Well, we can listen to Will while I'm emailing you because I'm.
I don't think
Okay.
Will just
Neanderthal.
emailed me. He said he's on a call that should wrap up any second now.
Oh,
But,
okay.
Or you can put it. You can drag it into the chat.
If
Okay, I can drag it into the chat. Very good idea.
the other option, of course, is that you can, when you email, copy myself, and then we can share it, screen it for you.
Okay.
Actually, Will is here right now. So while you're technically
Struggling.
deliberating, I'm going to hand
Sure.
over the floor to Will. Will, one of the recommendations that Tom just spoke to us about is creating a committee to actually dive deeper in the advisory council and how best to work that. And he's also written a resolution that we're going to read momentarily. But we all know that you've written a resolution recently, and if you could, which I included in the agenda, and just tell us about the work that you're doing with CB2 and providing a summary and what's coming up.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I spoke to this group back in December when we'd kind of just put out a resolution at CB2 about the study, and a lot of what we had originally called for in some of the other community boards was sort of increased engagement from the Army Corps. If you recall, originally, the tentatively selected plan and the Tier 1 EIS came out back in September, and they were originally going to have the comment period in January 6th. So we had thought that was not really sufficient, and we wanted them to do kind of a really full outreach program, which after that point they did. So I think a week after I spoke to this group in December, they extended it to March 6th. And sorry if you already mentioned this before I joined, but they've now gone ahead and extended it to is it the exact date, what, March 6th or March 7th? It's early March, and they've gone around and done a number of additional meetings, both with other community boards, other public meetings, other virtual meetings. They've put out sort of an updated presentation on the Army Corps website, which includes a few more slides about engagement. So maybe we can link to that if folks haven't looked at that yet. So in terms of the engagement side, it's definitely seems to be a bit more that they've done, which is good. That's a big part of what we asked for in our resolution. In terms of the actual content of the study, our resolution had a number of comments covering a number of categories. We felt for the initial comment period, kind of our role as a community board was to try to think about all of these things that perhaps had not yet been covered or thought about in much detail by the Army Corps, as well as to sort of document and memorialize the different concerns that people had. So if you look at our resolution, you'll kind of see a laundry list of those things. And, you know, we're going to submit that as part of the comment period. That's what we felt, given the complexity of the project and, you know, how much was out there. We felt that was sort of the best role in terms of the first round from CB2. So that's what we did. I mean, not much has changed in the last couple of months in terms of content. It's really been, they've increased the engagement as we asked for. So I would definitely be curious to kind of hear about any additional engagement that they've had with the trust, and kind of what the result of that has been. And happy to hear, you know, from others as well, who've been part of the process. But that's my understanding of where we currently stand. The overall timeline, I think, is the same. It's just that they've been doing more engagement than they'd initially said, which I do think is a good thing.
Yeah, Noreen, I guess the question's for you, because in the trust report, you did mention that you had a briefing from USACE and the New Jersey, New York HAT study this week. Can you elaborate on that at all for us?
Sure. Rashi Puri is here too, and she has, not only did she organize that one, but she also has attended probably, Rashi, 6 or 7 of the various briefings at this point.
Yes, a lot of them.
What was perhaps different about, if anything, from some of the other big public ones? I'll just do the high level, which is that as William described for us the last time very well, I think, this is obviously a long haul process, and the ability of the Army Corps to ever get funding for this is a very structured process, right? So there's this tier 1 EIS that results in a report that the Corps does for Congress. And it's only at that point that Congress may authorize it. And it's only at that point that they can hire detailed designers and various engineers and all of the other things that we would collectively need in order to understand exactly the answer to many, many of our collective questions. I think we all have many of the same kinds of questions here. So generally, as you know, our meeting was trying to understand certain of those things, which is public already. William kind of outlined it the last time, but we talked about things, for example, like with the alternatives, is there mix and match opportunities? Are there, instead of all the shore-based measures exclusively almost for our geographic area, are there other in-water features? Are there other things that could potentially be considered? They certainly did acknowledge that some of the habitat enhancing measures could be possible, but they're not really in the vein of the big protective floodgates. That's an alternative that, because they have to do kind of a cost benefit analysis, what they've previously done generally indicated that this had more cost benefit than otherwise. And I would say, just because I've been through this with the Corps on other projects in the past where this cost benefit analysis is part of their equation, I think that is an important takeaway for us all to think about as you know, the Corps has a very rigid framework from which it, under its own rules, I think, given to them by Congress, I'm not absolutely positive on that, they have to behave within that spectrum. So I think they're very interested in hearing from all of us, and they invited us to, if we had, for example, at Gansevoort, you know, the measures that they proposed there, we talked about this the last time, don't really work in the context of the project that we're currently building at Gansevoort. They offered us the chance to kind of mention other things like that, but it's not like we have the engineering for lots of these other solutions either. So that's all kind of high level. I guess the other thing that we just talked about is, from the 30,000 foot perspective, that they're doing this because it's a regional study that they're doing, not just our little 4 miles of the world, or shorter than that even. We tried to give them color on exactly how complicated just our little stretch is. And Tom, this kind of gets a little bit to what you're talking about too. There's businesses, there's thousands of employees in Hudson River Park, there's essential services, there's all kinds of other things that need to get in, to get out, all of this other stuff. So if, you know, the shore-based measure, if you're just talking about a park versus a park that needs to have all these different points of access for all these different kinds of uses, it starts needing, you know, the flood barriers to be deployed, et cetera, all kinds of other things like that. So, you know, I think that generally they're very open to hearing from all of us about process. I think that my takeaway, and Rashi, you should supplement this if I've missed anything kind of key here or misstated anything, is that they're just very bound by a process that is not theirs to devise.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, Noreen, you covered most of it. It was good to hear directly from the Corps because they were kind of focusing on the park, so we could talk specifically about the park. So that was very helpful. They are very high level, but they are open to hearing from us more details about the park, since obviously we are close to it. So things like, you know, during construction, how the bikeway would be affected, how the utilities would be affected, effect on the waters from noise, vibration, dust, pollution. So even like details like that, even though that is out of scope of what they have presented to us, but we feel it's important to put it out there. And we are putting our comments right now related with operational items as well as, of course, the big picture that Noreen just covered.
Noreen and Rashi, can I ask, you know, we talk about them being constrained by Congress and what they can do and doing this cost benefit analysis. Would you say that it's sort of a narrow cost benefit analysis that they're kind of forced to do? Like, are they not able to consider the cost of, you know, what they're calling the view shed and impact on that, for example, and sort of other externalities? Are they looking at that, or would you say it's sort of outside the scope of what they're allowed to do?
I think we didn't ask that question directly, but what I would say, just like all decision-making entities, there's what the report allows, there's an economic framework that they have to work within, where I'm sure there is some kind of template that is very defined. And, you know, what does it mean to protect a structure? So, for example, one of our questions was, well, west of the flood walls, there's structure too. The very expensive piers that the public sector largely, but also the private sector has built. And those are not in the area that would be protected. So, you know, what is defined as a structure is a kind of a key threshold question for our little stretch of the world. And my sense is that structure for them is more like residences and businesses, obviously, which, as we heard from Katie Bordenaro last time, people were really affected in our corridor, right? So I get that that would be the case, but we will certainly be, we feel like it's our job to explain that there are other structures that have been built that perhaps should be considered. But then, William, I think some of the other things like views and this, some of the more intangible things, if they're not allowed to take credit for them, that's where the collective opinion of elected officials and the public and people weighing in also comes in. So that's where, you know, Congress works for the people. So at the end of the day, my guess is that it's looking at all of the above.
And I would argue, Bill, that the value of views is extremely well documented economically, from a real estate perspective, from a public health perspective, water, people being able to see water psychologically, physiologically. So I would argue that there is tangible value that is monetized.
Right. No, I agree 100%. I guess my question is, how much are they accounting for that, and how much are they
Probably
accounting
not at
for
all.
what you'd call, maybe they would consider to be second or third order costs, right? So anyway.
But
So,
your feeling,
and-
Noreen, is that they're open to recommendations, that they're not looking to destroy our views to the waterfront. That, do you think they're looking for solutions, or are they looking for something quick? I mean, this March 7th deadline like scares me.
Yeah, so my very my personal belief is that they're very willing to hear if somebody had a better proposal for solutions. They were given a mandate to increase our collective resiliency in the wide region, right? And to try to minimize the damage to life and property that happened during Sandy. So their kind of given is that there's a kit of parts, sort of, that you can look at deploying in combinations and whatever's throughout this broader region, and you try to figure out the ones that have the best chance of succeeding and protecting the most number of people, businesses, properties, homes, etc. Whatever is in their rubric, and then have it be at a cost that provides, that cost benefit framework that is positive for them. So I think that they're willing. The issue, Daniel, including for the trust, where we have tons of knowledge about the specific way the park was built, is that designing a solution, you need designers and engineers and whatever, which they're not allowed to pay for until, or at the next stage, the detailed version, until Congress approves this version of the plan. And then B, pretty much anything that I can think of has some version of height or walls or something, either to the west of us, through the middle of us, or to the east of us, right? I mean, that's kind of the big scale kit of parts if you're looking at our geographic area anyway. West of us could mean obviously in the water if there was something environmentally suitable. But I think that's the basic gist of it. So, it's kind of almost like, do you believe that the starting point question should be, is there anything that should be put in that has a cost on some level? Does it block vehicles? Does it block views? Does it hurt the environment? Does it whatever, right? I mean, because it's almost like you can't imagine building anything without some cost like that. And it's how it all wraps up. So Danielle, I'm sorry, I think you can all tell that I'm learning just like all of you, but I think that they are open to hearing from us all. It's just that I think it's hard to devise specific solutions.
You have a number of questions here, and I have a question, but I'm going to ask after our two members. Tammy, you have a question?
So I think one of the things that strikes me consistently that Tom speaks to, and I'd like to support, is the conversation that this is a resiliency conversation that's being had and told to us based on existing. There hasn't necessarily been a look at, well, if we need to do something along West Street, maybe we have aging infrastructure. This could be the opportunity. Maybe that they do look at redoing the bike path, redoing 9A, moving, working with Con Ed, working with moving the water pipes, modernizing. I think in Community Board 1, we have seen more times than I can count on hands and toes, where they have one agency has ripped up the street, done their work, put it back down. Con Ed comes along, rips up the street, puts it back down. And then a third agency comes and rips up the street and puts it back down. And it's such a loss of a holistic vision. And that's sort of what I'm hearing here. Unless there's something I'm missing, there isn't really an opportunity to say, okay, well, the cost benefit ratio of a wall here is great because it's cheap and it's fast and it's easy. But if we took a bigger, cloud view of this, what could be done here? Would it be less costly? What's the obstacle to that? And I don't know, I don't think the Army Corps of Engineers has that holistic because they don't live, work, and play in the zones. They're just looking at it based on mappage. So maybe
I don't think they could, if you asked them, you said, well, the wall there has such and such a cost, but could they evaluate what the loss of viewscape is? What is the cost of, what's the value there?
Brandon, we're going to ask you to raise your hand if you want to ask a question or comment. So it's okay. Why don't you go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you. But I want to give, do you know how to do that with the Zoom? But I will be sure to call on you, but we have a couple other people first. I wanted to make sure that Tammy was finished with her question and if you're looking for a response.
My only thought is if we are going to really try and do this, no matter what we have all individually responded from Community Board 1, Community Board 2, HRP, T, and the AC, because that may be two different things, and that's a conversation we should have. But we should support the idea of a task force and working group. So there can be a little bit more diversity in the perspective. And maybe there are agencies that could come in and say, you know what, taking a look at this pipeline between here and there, we're going to be digging up the road to do this in the next 10 years anyway.
Yeah, I wanted to follow that up, but it sounds to me as what you said something that struck a chord with me, Noreen. You said that they're almost looking, they don't have designers and they don't have engineers yet assigned to it. Is it almost like they're looking for a cost to get approved first, and then they'll figure out how to do it later, and that it's like that they need that money approved, and then they'll figure out how to do it in a smart way?
Yeah, so they obviously, I mean, they are the Army Corps of Engineers, so they have done some high level planning and engineering, right? About like, in order to give us a collective sense of approximately how high would these walls need to be to do their protective job or something like that. There's been some technical stuff for sure, and I don't want to not say that, but you're right. Their mandated process, not just this little region, not whatever, is that they do a tier 1 EIS, which is where they solicit feedback. And then based on that, my understanding is that they then do sorry, Rashi, do you remember the tier 2 EIS comes in next?
Yeah.
Or the report to Congress happens next?
So right now it's the draft report, then it's the final one. And I think then it's the chief engineer's report that comes in.
And only after Congress approves the basic project do they then start getting detailed money, and they would probably pick a section of this whole regional plan. They might not start with us. You know, it might be that it starts out in Jamaica Bay somewhere, or, you know, this whole, or New Jersey. And there would be detailed engineering that would be done that where, Tammy, I think some of what you're talking about would occur, which is you know, okay, what does the construction, you know, what does construction look like? How long would this take? What else is happening in the neighborhood? All of those other things like that. It would be at that basic point, I think, where that kind of further analysis and coordination would take place.
Okay, thanks. Erica, Hector, and then Brandon. Okay, Brandon, you'll be after those three. So go ahead, Erica.
I was just curious, in the original drawing, they had Gansevoort, you know, on the correct side of the wall, the protected side. I was wondering if within this discussion, if you learned why. I remember in the last meeting, we all sort of scratched our heads about that. Just curious.
I think they didn't realize that we had started construction and we're elevating this, but you know, part of it is that the area that they're intending to protect, and this is in their documents, it's not a uniform length along the whole park. And we saw that in Sandy, right? Some areas got further inland flooding, some of the park got worse flooding than others. So I think the specific solutions are in part informed by the, you know, the actual floodplain and the mapping that they've done.
Great.
And also sorry, I just wanted to add also some of the solutions, like the levee is in an area which has more width. So the narrow width of the park determines the flood walls in most of the area. And if you see, they have a levee in the 23rd Street area because it's wider. So again, it's based on mapping, and they've just kind of worked with different type of shore-based measures, which are interchangeable. That's what we understood.
Thank you both. Hector?
Yeah, I mean, I foresee a lot of issues with the wall, obviously, like everybody else. But I don't know, there should be alternatives looked at. I'm sure the Army Corps of Engineers have tried to see other avenues like levees and dams, you know. But the seawall's got to be built. If it's got to be built, why not reinforce it with a more green space? Because obviously the more green space we have, the more resilient the ground is. Because one of the reasons we have flooding in the cities, because the sewage system can't compensate for the amount of rain that's coming in during these hurricanes and these storms. But if we have more green space, more ground, more soil, obviously it's going to absorb it more. I mean, that's pretty much what happened in Texas during that one storm that flooded the whole city, one of the cities out there, because it was all concrete. They didn't have any, there was no place for the rains to go. And that's kind of what's aggravating things here in New York right now. So it's not just a question of the seawall. And then also the seawall is only good for about maybe 35 years. What do we do after that? It's an ongoing investment here. It's not just build it once and we're good to go. And there's ongoing maintenance and more money that's going to be sunk into this as well. So we need to look at more better options than just the seawall.
Thank you for the commentary. Brendan?
Thank you. I was just going to say, if the Army Corps of Engineers needs to do cost-benefit analysis, we can't leave it up to them to try to figure out what the cost or value is of things like a viewscape. I think it has to be a citizen advocacy group, this group, or groups like this, that insist that the cost-benefit analysis ascribes a value to the view of the waters and the ability to get down to the water and recreational uses of the waters, etc., which have no obvious cash value. We have to somehow keep alive the notion that that has real weight to put in the scale next to things like flood damage and insurance losses and so on, which obviously are very important. That was my only point. And it's up to a group like this to make sure that that thinking gets into the analysis and the decision making.
And that leads us perfectly to Tom. Everybody should have received his draft reso. And if not, I can post it again, or Tom, you can read it, or I can share my screen while you read it. Or you had something else to say. You have to unmute.
The reason I have this background picture is this is what the park looked like when I started working here. That's Bank Street. That's the end of my block. So vision is what we're calling for here, and cooperation. So the advisory council urges the governor and the mayor to establish a task force, as they did to envision the Hudson River Park, to address the three major infrastructure challenges facing the future of the West Side waterfront: enhancing resiliency, restoring the estuary, and redesigning Route 9A to accommodate transportation, changing transportation modes and reduce traffic volumes. All three projects are critical to the future of the park and the desirability and value of adjacent communities and need to be coordinated. Just as they did in the 1980s, the governor and the mayor should have tasked a task force, and maybe a little redundant, to craft a bold vision to complete West Side revitalization by coordinating the efforts of the trust, the Corps, the relevant city and state environmental and transportation agencies to capture this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Something like that.
Thank you, Tom. I don't think it's redundant. I think it's important to, historically, that's what happened before, and then it should happen again. Do you have anything else you wanted to add before I might call on William and then we can talk about this? Or maybe
Just that this whole thing seems bass-backwards, as you say in Brooklyn. They don't know what they want, but they proposed a wall, and you can look at the cross sections of the wall with piles that go down 75 feet, with a footing that's 40 feet wide, and a wall that's 3 feet thick. So instead of like going out and asking for alternatives, so you can say, well, alternative A is an environmental enhancement, alternative B is this, alternative C is that, and you have a little range and you evaluate all of them. That's the way they used to go about things. Right now, we're looking at a drawing of a wall, and we haven't even discussed the issue publicly together. So it just seems like it's extremely premature. And as Noreen said, this is a long process. If anybody knows, she knows. And so if we're looking at a 2030 window from here to there, we should take the time to get there in the right way. That's all. And if we don't do it, nobody else will.
Thank you, Tom. William, who's also been leading the charge on this community board too. You want to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime back in on a couple things that different people said. So I would say, Tom, I think what you've put out, I'm not on this board, but I think it's a great idea. In response to, what you were saying about green space and green infrastructure. I mean, this was a major thing that our community board highlighted. I think the thinking has come a long way in the last 10 years about the importance of green versus gray infrastructure. I think a lot of experts would tell you need to do green to the absolutely 100% extent of what is possible before you turn to a gray alternative. If you look deeper into what they're proposing, with this wall design, it's actually going to create pooling behind the walls, right? And they're going to have to install additional pumping infrastructure just to pump the water out. So anything that they could do to mitigate that with water absorption, you can look to what they've done in Hoboken for a couple of examples, for instance, would be great. And we definitely that was one of the big things we told them when they spoke to us. And then just the last point I'd make on the timeline, I put another direct link to the January presentation that the Army Corps posted. If you go to page 10 of that link, they actually added this slide. It wasn't in the original presentation back in like November of last year, but they put a slightly more detailed timeline. So I think it's quite useful for those who want to see the timeline in one place. Click on that last link I sent and go to page 10. They are committing to additional public meetings from 2024 to actually throughout the whole process. So for the tier 2 EIS, throughout the design process, and then actually even throughout the construction process. So they are committing to a lot of engagement. Interestingly, they put in bold ongoing public comment opportunities and election opportunities every 2 years. So I guess that's implying there's federal elections every 2 years if you don't like what's happening. But that's on the slide as well. So again, thanks for inviting me here to present.
Yeah, thank you, William. I know you had a busy day today and squeezing us in. We have one more question from Isaac Daniel. Maybe you might be able to answer it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, not a question. Just wanted to support totally Tom's verbiage and just restate what I think everybody is saying is that the wall idea is, anybody can come up with that. We need a lot more imagination to address this issue.
Terrific. And we just got a note from Jeffrey, who's dueling his meetings tonight, just saying that he would support the letter and also ask for the same call from CB4. So maybe that's something that, we can join forces too in CB1 and 2, asking for the task force. I see Tammy, who's chair of CB1, raising her hand, giving us a thumbs up. Do you want to comment on that, Tammy?
Yeah, we are actually hearing it in our eventual EPC committee next week. So we'll be discussing it, and I'll take whatever we do here and forward it over to there so we can include it in our asks as well. I'm going to ask William, if you don't mind sending me those links, because it doesn't copy from the chat. For some reason, if you copy the chat, I can't paste it into the minutes. So if you don't mind emailing me those links, that'd be really helpful. And
Sure.
Yeah, it was successful for me, but that's because I clicked it directly from the chat. I didn't actually paste it. Yeah.
All right, I'll do that. I'll click and copy from there. But yeah, I think the more we can speak with a unified voice on the west side of the island, from CB1 through 4, I think, and throughout the trust, I think that will speak to a lot. We all have different needs, but the alignment issues, the green issues are, and so many of it are compatible between all the land from, the bottom of Chambers on up. So yeah, it'd be good to be in alignment.
And just so that history repeats itself, it was the community boards that forced the creation of an advisory committee. And that's why 1, 2, and 4 chair the committee. So everything goes full circle.
Thanks Tom. We can always ask you for the history because you've been here forever. So we appreciate that. Thanks.
Well, Maureen's been here almost forever.
True. And you both have incredible memories too. So thankful for you both being here. Michael, did you have a question?
I do. It's a real question. It's not rhetorical. And I think maybe Tom could answer it, or maybe Noreen. So I absolutely think that a task force sounds like the right idea. But my first question was, just establishing another body has a cost. There's many costs actually for establishing another body. And we got another body very similar down for Battery Park and all that, the East River stuff. So is it smarter? This is a real, I'll have to ask it as a closed question, but I don't have the answer. It's a true question. I mean, is it smarter to ask that this project be placed in the hands of people we already know and trust? So, for instance, is there expertise within the trust, or could the expertise within the trust be added to in order to guide this process in some way? I would hesitate to put it in the hands of a whole new group of people. I'm interested in people that I already know and have a track record with, and whose judgment I have some things on. So that I put the question out there: what is strategically smarter?
I would think that this is looking to multiply the talent we have at the trust and to marshal the talent we have on this screen, because again, I just can only refer to the last time around. There were public meetings where there were 200-300 people and everybody got up on drawings. And I mean, if it is really done correctly, it can be a wonderful process to bring people together, to explore both the area and its population, which is changing. And the park should reflect that. So
Tom, I absolutely don't doubt
that.
that part. My question is, should there be something in the letter that speaks to the composition of that body?
I think I tried to stay away from specifics because here we are, 40 of us trying to agree on something. So I had a whole page, which is now 2 paragraphs, just trying to boil it down to what do you think we could all agree on? But I agree, those are questions that are very important and should follow up immediately when we get the governor and the mayor to set up the task force.
Okay, dope. That makes sense to me. Unless anybody else has something to say about it, I'll let that go. Thank you.
I think it's a really good point, Michael, that we would hope that local consideration is given to community leaders that have a great understanding of our specific areas. So we hope that we're represented, something like that. Tom, would you consider adding that?
Yeah, that's fine. With appropriate and meaningful community participation. How about that?
Okay. Yeah. So if you resend that to me, I'll put it on letterhead, and we can.
I think we have to vote.
The chairs. Right? All in. I will circulate the letter. I think anyway, if it's not written, I still have to circulate it, and then I'll ask for anyone who has any opinions to opine on it, and I'll ask for a vote via email with basically just abstentions, recusals, or denials. So we'll get that out as soon as you can get it to me, okay, Tom? And then we
got it. You'll get it in the next 15 minutes.
I won't be able to act on it that quickly.
Oh, well, no, but
but maybe what we can do then is vote on it by the end of the meeting if you can get it done.
Sure. Okay, I'll get it to you right now. Thanks.
All right. Terrific.
And I'll highlight what I add.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Tracy. You just wrote me a note. And then we have Wendy. So good to see you.
Hi. I just wanted to support Tom's letter and Tom's points. It's so interesting. Until I heard you say it, Tom, I didn't realize, how very long it's been since this process took place originally. And it really is a good time to sit down again, and reimagine and look at, the weak spots and the new spots. And I think what you wrote was really great. I think Michael's point, perfect, right on. And I hope that we, pass this tonight.
Great. We're gonna go ahead and move on from this agenda item only because we're a little long on it, although it was very important. And I'm going to lend the floor over to the folks that are going to speak about the Apollonia.
I think we need to take a vote.
No, I think we have to get it revised first, right? We're adding a sentence.
We won't have time. because comments are due by March 7th. So we need to revise in meeting, post, and I
I agree with you. I think Tom is going to add that sentence in the next 15 minutes, and we'll just switch gears
It's
after the
already
Apollonia.
added.
And then we'll vote on it as soon as it's received, unless you're ready to send it now, Tom.
I am.
You are? Okay.
Yep.
You can email it to me.
You got it. Coming your way with a copy to Tammy.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Dan, I'm good to drop off, right?
Yes, you are. Thanks, William.
All right.
I'll send
Bye.
this resolution to you too, so maybe you can add it to whatever we're doing at CB2 as well.
Thanks,
All right.
William.
Thank you, everybody.
I didn't get it yet.
It's coming. Hold on a second. I'm still in Neanderthal, remember?
We don't want to interrupt the Apollonia, so we'll wait just another minute or two.
There you go.
Okay. Tammy, if you get it first, whoever gets it first, we'll throw it into the chat so everybody can take a look
There you
at it. Share my screen. Not yet.
It's underway. So whatever the
believe it.
ether.
You got it? Tammy, you want to share? You want to put it in the chat? Oops, I got it too. No, I didn't. I got something old. Oh, here. No. No, the last one I got from you, Tom, is 639. That's the first one.
Tammy, did you get it?
She did. She just put it in the chat.
good.
She copied the whole thing. So let's just read the line that you added.
Oh, I added with meaningful community participation. And the second paragraph, fourth line down after establish a task force, I added with meaningful community participation to craft a bold vision to complete the West Side revitalization by coordinating. So I just added with meaningful community participation.
I cannot see those words.
Again, in the keep
I'm
it
not
simple
raising my hand. I'm
school.
going to quickly say, quick edit, since it's going to the governor and the mayor. The paragraph that starts just as they did in the late 1980s would be,
Just as you did.
yeah. Well, you can't, it needs a small edit because
Okay.
they weren't the governor or mayor. You could just say,
Just
this is prior.
as in the 1980s, the governor and mayor.
Yeah,
Okay.
fine.
Got it.
Thank you, Wendy.
Now I
It's
got it.
good enough.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make the revision here. With meaningful community input. And then Wendy, could you just say again what you just said now that I have it open?
Oh, in the beginning of the paragraph, it's in the late, just as in the late 1980s, the governor and mayor should.
Just as in the late 1980s, the governor and mayor should establish, got it? A task force with meaningful community participation to craft a bold, great. So all those in favor of passing this resolution, say yay or aye.
Aye.
Any recusals, abstentions? Now's the time to say you don't agree with it. I'm going to mention that the resolution passes unanimously. So Tom, I'll go ahead and take this and I will go ahead and circulate it with the three chairs of this advisory council's signatures.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
And
Thank you. Yep.
Paste it in the chat as well, the most updated one that was just voted on.
Sure, I will go ahead and do that. I just have to save it now to my desktop, but in the meantime.
And I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, great. I was going to set it as a Word doc, but okay. But we have I think it passes. So let's move on to the Apollonia. Mary, would you like to say a few words as an introduction?
I'll just to say that they're coming at my invitation, and that's because I think they're doing great stuff. They've been essentially bringing a floating farmers market to the South Street Seaport, and I'd like us to talk about how we can bring it to the west side of Manhattan. And if you haven't heard the term sail freight, that means bringing cargo with the use of wind power, filling the sails. So Sam Merritt is here. He's the founder and the captain of the ship. Brad Vogel is someone who has actually dressed in Tyvek to volunteer on the Lilac. And he's been coordinating their shipments and doing PR and great stuff like that. And I also want to just recognize that we have some other mariners attending because of the interest in this topic of providing mooring places to ships offering community benefits. There are a couple of people here from the Clearwater listening in. So Samantha Hicks and Amelie Knobloch are here too. So I just wanted to mention them. But go ahead, Sam.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Mary. And it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm actually gonna, Brad has a little presentation. Our goal was just to give you a quick introduction to who we are, what we do, with hopes of starting to build a relationship with the West Side, exactly as Mary said. So we put together a very brief presentation. We'll just give you a quick intro. Brad will put it on the screen whenever he feels ready to, and then happy to hang out, answer questions, and see what the next steps are.
You should be able to share your screen if you'd like, Brad. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Yes. And everyone can see that, I take it. I'll just get that into slideshow mode. And here we go. Is that working out for you, Dan?
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right. Well, as Captain Sam mentioned, we are part of the team that runs Schooner Apollonia. And I want to be very upfront because when you see a vessel like this, Apollonia was built in 1946. It is a sailing schooner. This is not a living history project. We hope that people will dig into the history when they see the ship, but this is really future looking. This is about finding a sustainable way to transport goods now and in the future. And we're coming to this presentation having actually moved cargo under sail on the Hudson River and in New York Harbor since 2020. Everything that the ship has actually done in terms of carrying cargo has actually transpired during the pandemic, which is yet another hurdle to what is already an interestingly challenging prospect. But what we're about, as it says there, is demonstrating real, so actually happening, something that is tangible that you can see and see results. Sustainable, Apollonia, is actually moving things cheaply and almost entirely by wind. Human scale, that's the other thing about the places we work, and you'll see that as in our presentation, is this is not a massive industrial movement of goods. This is at human scale, and it's goods by sail. So we'll get right into it here. Sam, take it away.
Awesome. Well, I guess the first thing we wanted to do is just break down what sail freight looks like. I understand we're in the company of plenty of mariners, so we don't have to go into what sailing is by any means. But I think the point is everyone is probably aware that most modern sailboats also have inboard motors, and there are plenty of opportunities for a sailing vessel to sail or to motor along its way. And our mission is obviously to actually sail. And as such, we've been pretty diligent and sort of paid attention to what we've done throughout time. And we really sail 96% of the time that our boat is underway, it's sailing. As people here know, if you've spent time on the Hudson River and especially in New York Harbor, there are moments, mostly it's docking concerns where we just have to use our inboard motor. And then there, of course, if there's ever a safety concern, we're not going to be crazy about it. We're going to be as safe as possible out there. But the amazing thing about it is that we sail. And so I wanted to give you an idea of sort of like what that looks like. Home port for the vessel and for me personally is Hudson, New York, which is, about 130 miles up the river from where New York Harbor is. And what we will do is we'll take these 2-week voyages where we hire crew for a couple weeks and we sail all the way down to New York Harbor and all the way back up. We load a lot of cargo in Hudson, but we actually sort of like leapfrog along as we go up and down the Hudson River, making contact at multiple ports, taking things on and off of the vessel. So the whole idea of the program is to be really people friendly. We'll talk more about that in the future slides, but it's also it's not like a point A to point B only sort of trip. I mean, we are stopping on some of our 2 weeks trips, we'll stop 12 or 13 times. So almost every day we're making another port call. You know, we are a sailing vessel. As anyone knows, if you've tried sailing on the Hudson River, that sort of inevitably means you live and die with the tide. So there's a fair amount of time that we spend at anchor. You know, sometimes it's faster to sit there at anchor than to be going backwards. That's like one of the realities of sort of Hudson River sailing. And the other thing in terms of the sustainability of our model is not only do we actually sail, but we have a bicycle that we use to get things on and off of the vessel, and we really pay attention to the full carbon footprint and the full sort of transparent transportation story of the products that we move, and we care how it gets to the vessel and how it gets from the vessel. And so that's one thing we can tell everyone. We share that transparently, and in almost every product that we've moved, we've been able to take internal combustion engines like pretty much completely out of it, using sometimes alternative things like electric cars to get things down to waterfronts. Obviously, bicycles are a wonderful way of doing that. And we have our own bike and trailer kit that lives aboard the vessel to help facilitate this. So that's just a rough idea of how much we take the sustainability part of this seriously.
All right. So another major part of what we do, and you know, you might view this as incidental, but it's actually from the get-go part of our mission, which is to create life at the waterfront and to create a sense of activity and bring community together. And that's something that we've done in multiple places within New York City, but also along the Hudson River. So you have pictures here. We're working at the South Street Seaport Museum at Pier 16. In some of our October runs, we'll bring a bunch of pumpkins and squash and gourds and other things down, in addition to our standard cargoes. So we also work with the Fulton Stall Market there and some of the local school groups and PTA groups as well. The picture in the middle is a picture of one of our little pop-up markets where we are, you know, selling goods from producers in the Hudson Valley that are coming down for people. We also have a program we'll get into later called Boat Boxes, where it's basically a sort of take on or a spin on the CSA model, where people can sign up in advance to get shelf-stable goods brought down as a sort of sampler pack from the Hudson Valley. And then, you know, Schooner Apollonia itself is a for-profit entity, and that's part of our mission as well, which is to show that there is a way to get to profitability. And you know, we are a startup, and we know this is probably going to take about 4 or 5 years to get there. And we are diligently fundraising right now, actually through a nonprofit partner who is looking to help fund a fellowship that would focus on the green logistics aspects, not the crew side, but the logistics side, to help make this a more sustainable for the long haul in a fiscal sense, and also a more regionally interconnected venture.
Awesome. And the sort of other pillar of our organization, which inevitably has to be a pillar of any maritime organization, is that obviously there's people involved and there's crew that's involved. And that's part of the beautiful thing about running a ship up and down the Hudson River, is that there are people necessary. And so we are very proud that when you hire Apollonia to do something, we are putting that money toward paying mariners on the water, as opposed to paying for fuel to go into a car or a truck. And along the lines of also like hiring and paying people is the inevitable side of that, which is training people. That's not, it's interesting. There's many things, you know, we sort of set out to figure out sustainable ways to move cargo, and then there's all these other sort of things that have gotten worked into it. But really getting more folks out on the water, helping develop a relationship with the water, and building more mariners is critical. As Brad said, our big picture is to develop a model where more boats will join, where there's more people working on the water, and where this is a reasonable career you could have sailing cargo up and down the Hudson River.
Right. And one other thing about the crew is that Captain Sam mentioned he's up in Hudson. I'm actually over in Brooklyn in Gowanus at the bottom of the run. And then the crew members are from all over the place, like Red Hook, Kingston, sort of scattered along the route of the vessel. Right. And just to reinforce what we were saying, we work with a lot of different waterfronts. And a lot of these waterfronts are places where commercial waterfront activity of any kind, shipping by vessel, has not happened for a good long time, and certainly not at the scale that Apollonia is operating. So you can see that we can go all the way up to Albany, but the vast bulk of what the boat does is from Hudson, New York, all the way down to New York Harbor. And last year we also actually added Carteret, New Jersey, where we pick up green coffee beans in bulk and move them upriver to roasters, which is a really exciting prospect for the coming season. But you can see over on the other side in the city proper, right now, places we dock include Long Island City, the Seaport Museum, the Ready Center barge in Red Hook in Brooklyn, and 115 Marina in Brooklyn as well.
Cool. And then, yeah, just to give some examples of cargo, I mean, this is by no means all inclusive, but it's just some kind of fun moments of things that have moved aboard the Apollonia. You can see the note there. Over the past 3 years, we've moved over 110,000 pounds of cargo. And you can see on the top left, there's some peppers. That's kind of a fun story that's actually peppers that we sailed up the Hudson from the mid Hudson Valley up to Hudson, where they then got made into hot sauce that then we sailed down to New York Harbor. So that's an interesting example of weaving together the Hudson Valley. On the bottom left, you can see a bunch of logs. And what those are is they're actually oak logs, sustainably forested from Catskill Mountains that were used in community gardens throughout Brooklyn mostly to cultivate shiitake mushrooms. That was a really fun collaboration with Cornell. The bags you can sort of make out on the top there. We do a lot of malt and flour and other bulk grain products. Brad already talked about the pumpkins a little bit. And then, yeah, through the boat boxes, we have a way to engage with individuals as well. So obviously, like a lot of our cargo is for larger consumers or businesses who need stuff in bulk. That makes sense, obviously, to move stuff on the water. But a big part of what we want to do is engage with people and get people thinking about this and sort of get the idea out there that there's options in transportation, right? Like everyone knows there's like organic food is something you can spend a little bit more money on if you care about it, or like fair trade is another one of those things. And so we're trying to get shipping sort of into that similar mindset. And so we find it really important to engage with people and to talk about transparency. And we have a little wind shipped tag we actually can add to products to just sort of like add, hey, how did this product get there? And we're working with, it's actually fun. We're working right now with some students at Vassar to try to help make that story even more tangible, so people can like scan a QR code on a product and like learn when it sailed down the Hudson River and like what foul weather events it had, in a way to really not only tell the story of transportation, but also help people engage with the Hudson River and the connectivity of these products that are really bouncing away all the way down, sometimes peppers going up to become hot sauce to come back down, but sort of teaching you about the Hudson River as we deliver cargo sustainably.
Right. And two other things that we did start in the last season included a sustainability challenge that we put out to large nonprofit galas, saying, what do you use in your gala that we could replace with a sustainably shipped iteration of that good or product? And we did that with the Waterfront Alliance, and it was really successful and really fun. We also started moving some paid cargoes for food pantries. So that was another thing that we're really hoping to expand upon in the coming season. All right, possibilities at Pier 26. You know, Sam and I had a chance to speak with Mary Habstritt, and we're so glad she invited us this evening. And we were thinking, you know, we really don't right now have a place to dock on the west side of Manhattan. And we just got to thinking about, you know, what would that look like if something like that was of interest at Pier 26 in particular. And, you know, right now, the season is shaping up in such a way that we're thinking that we'll have about 4 different voyages. It's certainly possible that there will be more depending on how cargo lines up for the season. But what we do in other places is we bring tangible water's edge programming. So that means the vessel is actually there. It's visible to people on shore. There's a chance for people to just come up ambiently or by design, if there's a program or event set up, such that they can engage with the ship's crew. They can actually talk with the people doing the working, you know, you hear about green jobs in the abstract. Well, you can actually talk to some people who are doing green jobs and get a tangible sense of that. And you also see how this process works. You see the vessel open up the cargo hatch. You see the crew take out using, you know, various ropes and lines. They take out the electric cargo bike that is actually powered by solar panels on board. And then they take out the trailer, and then they take out the cargo, and they fix it all together, and they actually move it off the dock onto land, and then take it off to one of the, the end user purchaser of the goods somewhere in the neighborhood. And we also have a mobile exhibit from the Hudson River Maritime Museum that we deploy, which basically tells about both the history of sail freight on Hudson River, but also looking at sort of like what projects are coming down the pipeline, because there is certainly across the pond in Europe, there are a lot more sail freight ventures underway, gearing up, and a lot of ships that we hope will be calling at the Port of New York within the next 2 years or so. We'd also love to partner with Lilac in sort of making a visit really focus on supply chain transparency, as Sam was mentioning earlier, and then fun things like a pumpkin visit where we've seen that really work at Brooklyn Bridge Park, where families came down, and it was a great chance for the kids to do something fun, but also for the parents to engage and learn about the process as well. So those are just some thoughts that we had, and we'd certainly be open to chatting with anyone on the staff or anyone on the board about ways to think about what might be of interest.
Terrific. Oh,
And thank you.
let's see, why don't you stop sharing your screen, and then I'm going to see if we have some questions. First of all, that was a terrific presentation. I think we all very much enjoyed it, and there's so many things that are happening that you just don't know about, and it's inspiring to see you working behind the scenes, clean energy. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Does anyone from the Advisory Council have any questions that they might be able to pose? I guess, Mary, oh, there's Richard. Richard has a question. I didn't think you were going to be with us tonight, Richard, but I'm glad you're here. So
well, for better or for worse, the community board meeting ended earlier than I expected, and so able to be here. Yeah, this is, of course, to see something like this is so much fun and important for all of us on this call, all of us who are so, who so love the Hudson River. But I have two questions. Aside from how exciting and wonderful and just lovely an idea this all is, you talked about sustainability, financial sustainability. Can you talk more about that? How do you see that happening? How can it happen? How realistic is it? Where do you see the opportunities to really make this a viable long-term sustainable project? That's my first question. My second question is really easy. Have you been in touch with the Harbor School, and have you connected with them for all of the work that they do in terms of training and staff and sailors and the like?
Want me to start off, Brad? Or
yeah, I'm happy to jump into the fiscal or sort of economic sustainability of it. I know that there's a tendency anytime you see a sailboat that again looks historic right away to presume that this is just a novelty and someone's pet project. But I have now been involved for 3 years doing the actual behind the scenes work and actually working to grow the cargoes, and actually working with a much more diverse range of partners than I would have ever guessed. And I've seen us go from 2020, when we had about 6 experimental cargoes on board, to the October run in 2022, where we were covering, somewhere in the range of 60 to 65% of expenses. And we had really grown by diversifying, by really honing in on which particular agencies, companies, product lines really actually worked with our model. And we've also benefited from the fact that there's sort of 2 things going on. One, more and more people are actually cognizant of what it means to be sustainable and why that matters to them. So companies then are actually willing to engage. And 2, and on a practical sense, with the price of fuel and with congestion, there are several people who said to us, it's not even so much about the sustainability. You are simply a more practical way for us to get our goods to the city. And we're working right now with, for example, a whiskey distiller upstate who is about to open a tap room or a tasting room rather on Governor's Island. And for him, it's like, it is literally the best way to do this work. And a lot of the companies we work with usually are shipping via box truck or semi, and they tell us, we would rather ship with you even if it costs slightly more, because you actually get the product to the end customer that we need it to get to, because in many cases it literally does not get there or goes to a different state. So it's really interesting to see how the practical nature of what we do actually has some teeth. It actually bites. The cogs are turning. And so as someone who was a little bit concerned that this might never get to that point when it started out, I can tell you that it is certainly on the right track. We did not think that this was going to turn a profit in year 1 or year 2, and probably not in year 3. And this is really something for the longer haul. But we think we're trying not to go a pure nonprofit route, because we really think if this is going to be replicated and we're going to get more people involved, and we're going to get people thinking about how they could do it better, which we invite, we really think that this is a model that's worth sticking with and trying to push.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple things, but well said, Brad. But just, I mean, the work that we've been doing for the past few years is deeply complicated and challenging, and many parts of it are, trying to activate infrastructure that hasn't been used in years. Those 20 ports that Brad showed, right? Like, there have been meetings like this, and then the meetings that follow this, and then lots of behind the scenes research and personal connections to even get invited to come to those places, right? And so part of the sort of realization that we've come to is we need to have a nonprofit partner who can handle some of that work, right? Like the waterfront revitalization, the revitalizing infrastructure, the help, that is not practical. 165-foot vessel sailing cargo cannot handle the overhead to do all of that. But at the same time, as we've been sort of like struggling to do all of that, we've realized that once that's in place and you can actually establish what we're sort of calling the trade routes, we actually can pay a crew. And we've done it through this like highly diversified sort of like system. We actually, one of the things we also do is we don't charge more for shipping than what it costs to ship on a truck. We just make our shipping partners promise to us first that it's actually replacing shipping. So it can't be a gimmick. We won't work with someone who just wants us to sort of like sail in a circle to say something was on a sailboat, but then it actually transports all its time on a truck, right? So it has to actually displace their shipping. And then we sort of ask our partners to work with us to create another revenue stream that we can share. And a good example of this is there's like a brewery that we work with in Beacon that we deliver malt to them. And that malt, we deliver it for the same price it would cost if a truck delivered it, which honestly it's not a great way to pay your crew on a schooner when one truck driver with, half a tank of diesel can do the same thing. But then what happens is they make a beer that's called Flotsam, that's themed for the Hudson Valley, that's themed for the Hudson River and our schooner. And then we actually then pick it up and we deliver it to the classic Harbor Lines fleets, because they are interested in telling that story aboard America 2.0 and aboard Adirondack. And all of a sudden, then we have a new product that does have added value that we can share in and the brewery can share in. And so that's been, that's just like one really tangible example, but of like, let's take something, let's not make it so that our services are inflating the price so it's unaffordable or so things become like insanely niche or anything like that. But then let's also ask people, hey, how can we work together? Because we do have to pay a crew and we do have to make this thing work. And so I really do think if we can get some of the work that we're doing behind the scenes, sort of a partner not-for-profit that can do some of that, then I think we can put a model together. And I do think, events have been really fun, really engaging, and have been part of it, and the mobile farmers market component of it is not sort of what I set out thinking about doing, but it's really fun to engage with people in that way. And even like the Windship pumpkins and getting kids involved has been a wonderful tool. And then in terms of just the question about the harbor school, absolutely, we have reached out to the harbor school, and I think the more we really have a functioning model we can share, the more we can help plug people into it. It can become a summer job or an internship or something like that opportunity. And we can give presentations like this to just open up eyes of young mariners to opportunities and dream big and think about what you can do. And I try to be really honest about all the challenges that we face, because there's plenty of them, but it's fun to sort of like do something and show that it's possible.
Great, Sam. We have a couple more questions. Mary?
Well, I'm really more commenting. One thing, when I first brought this idea up of having Apollonia approach the park about mooring and perhaps bringing them to a future meeting, Tammy's reaction was, can't we get them to dock in North Cove? And I wanted to point out that for a startup operation, any kind of small operator or a nonprofit operator of a ship, North Cove is extremely expensive. And I think they're clearly providing a public benefit. And I think we should be creative about how public piers can be used. The park has a mandate to include historic ships, but our historic ship community has started defining what we do more widely. We talk about cultural and educational ships. And I think it's pretty clear that Apollonia would fit into that category.
Tammy, I'm going to let you respond since your name was brought up.
No problem. You know, the funny thing about North Cove is it is owned by a public benefit corporation. It happens to be sub-managed out, but there does, to me, it's always of value to present opportunities that they could enhance the public experience to be able to do that and see if it could be done for something. There are several rules and regs on what can and cannot be done in terms of business in the North Cove, which is different. But, you know, I'd be happy to help that conversation go somewhere else. Yeah, I find it really sad that there's limited opportunities on the west side to be able to have not only historic boats, but sailing and things like that. It's just a bit on the untenable for public benefit.
Okay, did you want to respond to that, or should I go to the next question or comment? Tom?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think this is a wonderful idea, and this is what a maritime park should be doing, which is supporting the maritime rebirth of the harbor and recalling its historic past. Aaron Singh over at the Harbor School, I used to run New York Water Taxi, get lots of great kids who are now captains and harbor masters for the Parks Department, wonderful repository of talented youth. If we could accommodate this type of use in a place like Pier 25, which has a float, and Clearwater, which Sam, good to see you on the phone, on the line here, has always wanted to dock in the park, and the park seems to have wanted Clearwater to come. I can't help but think that this is another opportunity to do something special, and they can pay rent. They're a for-profit. So, Noreen, you don't have to lose money to accommodate them.
So we're
Anyway.
we're getting late into it. It was a
Okay,
great
sorry.
presentation. No, it's
I
fine.
think it's
These are all
wonderful.
great
And I
comments.
support it
I
wholeheartedly.
would hand it back to Mary and ask her, since she's the most knowledgeable, would you be willing to write a resolution that we can consider at the next meeting?
If that's the direction you want to go, sure.
Well,
They're already talking to Carrie Roble and Rashi about the possibility. You know, I just wanted them to come here too, since there'd clearly been community interest. When I brought it up, Tammy just got right on the phone to me and said, how do we get them here? But yeah, I can do that.
are there any members here that would not be in support of writing a resolution in favor of investigating where the Apollonia might be able to dock within the park? Well, seeing no opposition, I think that it'd be interesting to see that resolution, and keeping it simple in support of what seems to be a business that would only work in Hudson River Park. As far as, you know, it works perfectly in Hudson River Park, I should say. So, all right. Well, thanks, Mary. Thanks for bringing Apollonia to us. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate your time and all your efforts. And Tom, you have one more question, or your hand is still up? No? No, you're muted. So I'm going to put your hand down, and I'm going to hand it over to, I guess, Noreen, who's going to hopefully everyone was able to take a look at the report today. It wasn't that long, wasn't controversial. So if you want to give us a wrap up, I know there were a couple of things I spoke to Robert about that we wanted to just talk about briefly within the report, and that was the grant, if there are any kind of restrictions, as well as there was another letter that was asking questions about the RFP boathouse update. But I'm going to give you guys the floor, let you finish your presentation, and then we can ask questions thereafter.
Sure. Do you want to give us a target, Daniel, for, I know we're running a bit late.
Well, I
can do it
think that-
fast, or we can not.
How about 20 minutes?
Sure.
And then with questions, 15 presentation, 5 questions, because right after that, we're going to be talking about water safety that also, it all kind of intermixes. But why don't we give you the amount of time that you need. And if you see it's like 8:15, know that we're going to have to really wrap it up. But if it's 8:10, that's perfect.
No, we'll try to be faster. Chris McCann and Rob Rodriguez are on, and I was gonna actually ask them to start on all things operational. Rob, you wanna go?
Sure, be happy to. Kind of give you a quick update on some of the park management operations pieces of it. This winter, the horticultural staff has been very busy pruning trees throughout the park in an effort to improve lighting and safety sight lines. We've also brought in a professional tree contractor to help us with that effort as well. You'll notice if you've been in the Christopher Street area, the fountain that's there had some shrubs and evergreens placed inside of the fountain this winter in an effort to kind of provide some color in the winter time. And our facilities and maintenance team were able to put in some festive holiday lights over the fountain, and we're in a process of taking those lights down. The plants will stay there for throughout the winter, and then we'll look to plant them in our garden beds throughout the park come spring. And hopefully that's something we can do every year, actually. One of the other things we've been working on is identifying a list of potential electric powered equipment that can eventually replace our gas powered equipment. And that's everything from weed whackers to pruners to, lawnmowers, snow throwers, as well as large equipment like generators and that kind of thing. And so we've been working with our friends group and trying to identify potential funding sources for that in the future, or as they become available. Graffiti.
Just on that note, there are supply chain issues everywhere. So one example is the electric forklift that we want to buy, or lift that we want to buy now. We'll be lucky if it arrives next year at this time. There's quite a number of things in that vein that really affect us in ways big and small. And that's just a general thing that I thought you should all know.
Graffiti continues to be a problem for us, particularly at Pier 25 Skate Park. We're exploring some small engineering deterrents, things like anti-climb paint and sensor lighting that would hopefully deter some folks from using that space. And I know Chris has a few things, but I'll also mention the state DOT has finally told us when they will start their bikeway resurfacing project. They plan to begin in mid-March. This is going to take, they're saying 9 months, but it could be longer than that, of course. All the work will happen overnight. And so we're trying to get as much information as possible so that we can coordinate anything from the park's perspective in terms of access. The first major task is to remove the bollards, the safety bollards that are on the bikeway, and place other temporary devices there so that it's easier to maneuver the milling equipment and paving equipment when it finally comes through on the bikeway. So, and we're also gearing up for a lot of CPR training, AED training for a lot of our staff, recertifications. especially the folks that interact with the public and are outside constantly. So, and as well as other trainings throughout. Now's the time where we try to catch up on all of our training wintertime. So, and Chris McGann, if you're still on, I know he's got some public safety updates as well.
Hello, everyone. I think, Rob, you covered most of it. I just want to touch, we're going to talk about, what is safety here. We had a few incidents recently. I know it started out when I first got here, we talked about expanding the life rings that we have. And that was one of our missions. We had designated spots. And over the summer, we lost 12 life rings in one incident. We continue to lose the life rings. People just walk by, they take them with them, they throw them in the water. We replace them. We get about maybe a little more than half of them back. So it's a costly maintenance, but they do get used. So I think, it's a price worth paying. Just recently on January 28th, we had someone jump in the water at the end of Pier 62. PEP was responding to an emotionally disturbed person there. As they spoke with him, NYPD was called. As they approached, he just broke from the conversation, jumped into the water. There was a life ring right there. PEP immediately grabbed it. He wasn't interested in it, but it was there if he needed it. And eventually the FDNY Marine boats grabbed him out of the water. 2 days later, a young woman took that same life ring out of the cabinet, walked down to Chelsea Piers, down the ramp, took off her clothes and jumped in the water, holding on to the life ring. And Chelsea Piers staff pulled her out of the water there, and she was taken to the hospital for evaluation. The water's cold now. The currents are strong. Like it's dangerous. So again, the life rings, we are going to expand it. We do lose them. It's not something that we're missing, but they get used regularly. We used them 3 times, PEP, in July this year. 3 separate rescues. 2 of them, they were significant in the rescue. So it's definitely a worthy program. One of the other issues we had is we've experienced, basically in the last 6 months, we had 6 incidents of young kids on bicycles, mostly on Sunday evenings around 5 to 7 o'clock. They ride through the Esplanade, harassing people, mostly just like they'll knock over bags or they'll knock over hats. They smacked people in the back of the head. They appear to be young. It's very difficult to combat. On January 1st, New Year's Day, was the most significant incident. We had 22 of them that came, and there was a more violent incident. They were up north, just south of the heliport, riding there, and I guess they went by and they slapped someone, and he went back after them. He actually chased a few of them down, and it led to a larger confrontation where they all jumped on him. Police came, he was taken to the hospital. He was all right. He didn't sustain serious injury. But as we looked at the attack on the video, it was scary, I think, he made things worse by chasing them down and going after others that weren't necessarily the original harassers. But it was a concern that's happened to us 6 times. I had a meeting with the 6th precinct, the Build the Block precinct meeting. I brought it up to see if anyone else had experience there. And no one else in the 6th precinct really had experiences with the kids on the bike. There were some things with motorcycles and scooters and cars and even kids walking, but the bicycle didn't seem to be unique to us. So there's only been 2 incidents where, people were actually struck. Mostly they harassed the PEP officers. It's mostly harassment. They're young. So something we're working on. I think that's it. There was one incident that sounded concerning at Chelsea Waterside Park, the dog park. I spoke to someone. PEP's been paying special attention there. We haven't had another incident. It was a person that I guess was frequenting a few of the dog parks that were known to the people there that just doesn't interact well with others. Nothing violent, but it was brought to my attention. We had PEP staying on top of that.
And Chris, you also did the Build the Block precinct meeting, right? With the 6th precinct in the neighborhood.
That's the one where I brought up the instance with the kids on the bicycle. And like I said, no one else really in the community had seemed to experience that. But And it could be, they're probably just local kids that come onto the bikeway. They get together on a Sunday or something, but.
Do you have a plan? Apologies for not having my hand up. I know that I had heard about, and Graham posted in the chat as well, that there were issues around the kayaking area in the summertime. Do you know, is there a plan for when the weather is nicer to, for any of those like, what is the safety security plan? What is, what should people do or see if they see something to say something?
Well, it's always, we post, there's an operations desk number here where you can call us for non-emergencies and PEP will respond. Quality of life things, if you're concerned about someone, whether they're suspicious or if they appear emotionally disturbed or they're walking either, too close to the edge, you're wondering, call the operations desk, PEP will come down. But obviously anything that's a crime in progress or someone needs help that's an emergency, it's best to call 911 first.
So, this weekend, Little Island, there was a person brandishing a knife on Little Island. Little Island alerted probably 911, but also PEP. PEP was able to respond first. PEP was able to remove the person who did not go quietly. So, a lot of things are whoever can get there first, Tammy. But in addition, there is very definitely, Rob worked very hard. We all do on public safety in the park. In our proposed budget for this coming year, Chris and Rob recommended, and I support, trying to get additional senior level staffing from PEP on various ships, so that it kind of increases the kind of depth of what we are able to achieve with the officers that are out there. We're the only park that has this kind of overnight and as much dedicated presence as we have, but we have dozens of piers and 4 miles and no one can be everywhere at once. We have cameras, there's layers and layers of things. And our tenants, our partners, our community members, everybody else that helps be eyes on the park, etc. Chris is here. You're all getting to know him. These are all things that have to come together to kind of keep our park as safe as it can be.
Great. I was gonna allow questions after. I was gonna do the whole trust report and then ask questions because I had some questions based on some earlier stuff. So this way we can get it all through. Is it okay, Michael, if we just find out if the trust is finished with the report, or did you want to comment?
No, that's
on what
fine.
happened with Little Island?
Yes, of course. You run the meeting as you see fit, Dan. That's fine.
Let's just wrap up the final report and then we'll go backwards back to the first thing. I have a couple questions or just one. Noreen, is there anything else that we've left out on the trust report?
Yeah, I'm not going to go through everything here. We're looking for sponsors for next year. It's our 25th anniversary year at Hudson River Park this year, 25 years since the Hudson River Park Act was signed later this year. And we're hoping that that's an opportunity for us to get some good press for the park, but also to help maybe interest some sponsors and others. If anyone ever knows of a possible sponsor, please let us know. That is something that, is directly helpful to us. Thank you. Some of you attended our very frosty groundbreaking ceremony for the science play area back in mid-December. It was, as I put it, cheerful but chilly, or chilly but cheerful. And we're trying for that project to be done in slightly warmer weather by the end of this year. You can't but have noticed the incessant coverage about the Gansevoort Beach. Hudson River Park Trust did not initiate this story, as you'll see from our report. When the New York Times did a kind of opinion article about how New York was becoming LA and mentioned, and we're even going to get a beach, that just started this cascade of people calling and rewriting each other's stories about the beach. So there have now been probably 50 stories in the last couple of weeks. We're in People magazine. And Daniel, I promise a little humor occasionally. One of my named competitors out there, Noreen Doyle, reached out to me last week to congratulate me and to say that she had been getting all the congratulations. Hudson River Park Beach. I was happy to meet her because I had gotten congratulations when she'd recently been appointed to a board of sorts. So anyway, that's my little humor for the meeting, Daniel.
That was nice. I like that. It's nice, good levity.
Yes, okay.
So does that conclude the trust report, or you have anything else?
No, a couple more things. You should have received today from Ted a public meeting notice for a joint meeting that we're hosting with Community Board 1 to kind of kick off the design discussion process for the estuarium. That meeting is on February 27th at 6 p.m. It's a Zoom meeting. So if you did not get the flyer for whatever reason, it's on our website. It's on CB1's website, I think. The links, all etc. are there. And other than that, I said at the board meeting that we will be getting the request for proposals out for the design team for the 29th to 46th Street area of the park, excluding Pier 76. That's its own big project. It's a very complicated area. There's ferry terminal, there's gateway tunnel, there's private owned pier, there's leases, there's all kinds of other things like that. But we do want to do what we can to advance the design for that area. So it'll take months for us to get a design team on board. And once we do, just as we did at CB1, we'll introduce the design team. We're committed to our usual community process, etc. So Danielle, I can stop there.
Actually, Robert said you might just touch on two little things too before.
Yes, okay, sure, right. So we had an opportunity as part of the various federal budget processes. We had an opportunity a couple of years ago almost to submit like mini applications through our federal elected officials for various projects with various government agencies without knowing almost anything about what they would fund. We sent this out, it's in our report, but we also sent something out at the end of the year. We are getting a $750,000 grant from NOAA. That's the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, for some combination of either environmental enhancements and or research. I think more likely research. We don't have a single communication from NOAA yet, so that remains to be seen, exactly what the process is to secure that, etc. We got $1 million for safety improvements. We're not allowed to spend that on cameras. We are likely to spend it on improved pedestrian lighting, possibly replacing some of the uglier bollards that are about, if we can figure out a way to do that. Other things like perhaps railing treatments in various places where if that, like isolated stretches where there might be an improvement. No massive new bollard project or anything else like that, and it avoids the bikeway entirely. It's all physical things that would be in the park. So again, there's a long process. We don't expect that we would even fully be vetted for this project this coming year. It would most likely be an FY25 project. And then Rashi is our point person for the boathouses. The boathouse RFP, we had hoped to announce our slate of boathouse operators by the end of the year. We are not quite on that schedule, but we've been pushing. Rashi, just so that you all know, when something is an open RFP, we are bound by state rules about that. So there's lots of stuff that we can't say, and it all has to go through a designated RFP point person who is Rashi. So Rashi?
Sure. So we're still in the RFP procurement process, and just an overview. We are seeking operators for our 4 purpose-built non-motorized boathouses in the park. All of you know, but Piers 26, 66, 84, and 96. So at this point, there is really not too much to share, but that the RFP received 7 proposals for these 4 locations. This means that we've had to look at different and creative ways in which we can use the boathouses, including potentially boating organizations sharing a boathouse. So currently we are in discussions with different respondents to move this forward. And just to remind everyone, we've had boating organizations share a boathouse space very successfully over the last few years. So that's something which we've been doing a lot. And our goal in this RFP, as in the previous ones, has been to provide safe, consistent, and affordable access to the river while providing the visitors with a range of boating programs and types of boats. So that's really where we are. We hope to be able to make a selection very soon, and we will update the advisory council as soon as we do that.
Tammy, did you need something repeated for the minutes? This now? No?
I did from Noreen, where she was talking about the RFP creating new design that omitted, it was after the estuarium, thank you for meeting announcement and before the budget applications.
RFP for a design team, a comprehensive design team for the area from 29th Street up to the southern border of the Intrepid, where the park is unimproved mostly.
And what is it? You said it omits which pier?
Oh, Pier 76. And we have not issued it yet, but we hope to be issuing it within the next few weeks.
Thank you. And then I'll, when we do Q&A, I'll put my hand back up.
Okay, thanks. Michael, are you talking about safety? Because I have a question for about a little bit earlier in the report. I'll get to you if it's about safety.
Yeah, I mean, very quickly, I want to say thank you to Chris McGann. Also, just want to make sure everybody hears me say this. Thank you to Pat. Yeah, that situation with an emotionally disturbed individual was very dicey and very sensitive, and we're grateful for the responsiveness there. So the system is working.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. I'm glad no serious injuries happened and that you were able to save our citizens. Before I call on you, Brett, I had a question from earlier. You mentioned the bikeway resurfacing project, Rob, and you also mentioned removing the bollards. You know, the bollards are like, and also Noreen mentioned possibly replacing them with better looking bollards, maybe with the capital project or funds of some sort. All right, so is the plan to like resurface the bikeway and then just put those big, ugly, dangerous bollards back?
As far as we know, that's what the DOT has told us. They're removing them and putting them back. They're not funding new bollards. They're just funding repavement of the surface. But in order to do that, the contractor has to move those bollards out of the way temporarily and then put them back.
I mean, obviously we have beautiful bollards and we have dicey bollards. And you know, the ones that are permanent and the stainless steel are beautiful, and they're, you know, and they work very well. The ones that were temporarily put in, seems a shame to just put them right back in after you know, the big long white ones that we use to block streets. Just seems as though it would be a perfect opportunity to maybe revise that, but that's out of your control, it sounds as though.
Go ahead, Maureen.
We will take advantage of the opportunity to make suggestions where we can, Daniel. So we're with you.
Okay, thanks. I figured you were. That was my comment question. And Brett, you have a question?
Yeah, hey everybody, thanks for your efforts. My name is Brett Hine. I am a volunteer at Manhattan Community Boathouse. I also am a sea kayak instructor, do a lot of public service volunteer work on the waterways, inclusive of Hudson River. Just wanted to strongly encourage you when you're considering your groupings. I understand that they're important, but I as a volunteer, I'm not an officer director at either Manhattan Community Boathouse or NYKP. I'm a member of each or a volunteer of each. And my 2 cents is, I think it's very important that those two groups be put together from a public safety standpoint. And that's because of the information and knowledge and skill transfer. New York Kayak Polo has some of the most experienced and knowledgeable kayak instructors and practitioners. And having spent a considerable amount of time volunteering at all these organizations, as far as the groupings that I'm aware of, it will make a material difference over time for public safety. So just wanted to share that with you all.
You know, Brett, our next agenda item, hoping we can get to it, we may have to table it for the next meeting, will be about public safety in the water and what we can do to join forces and make it more productive, because it was a item that was brought up by Rob Buchanan, who's not here with us tonight, but it's something that has, you know, been a long conversation. I don't know if the trust wants to respond to anything you said, or
We can only hear your comment. You're asking for a particular solution, and we've heard your comment.
Yeah, I'm actually stating from a firsthand public safety standpoint. It's non-trivial, and that's why I'm.
So we understand, and there's a public process that involves public safety as one of the first considerations that we have to think about for all of the voting programs. So thank you.
I think I think what's going to happen is we're probably going to dive into this much deeper, Brett, in the next advisory council meeing, because I can tell already that we're probably not going to have time for it. But if you come join us on March 14th next month, we'll dive deeper into it.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Erica?
Yeah, I was just curious about the bikeway repaving, because, you know, it's a 24-hour city, so people are biking actually in the middle of the night, and I don't know what's considered night for state DOT. So I was wondering, is this going to be a project like when you're on the highway, you're driving and they do one side and the other side remains open, or will a whole section get closed? And if that happens, where do the bikers go?
My understanding, it's being done in sections. There will be detours set up in the evenings, overnight. I'm not sure what the hours are, but certainly later than 10 p.m. and it would probably wrap at around 6 a.m. But the detour may end up crossing the street onto the east side of West Street.
Wow. And is there going to be, you'll release like a schedule? So
it's not our project.
It's not our project,
State
right?
Department of Transportation,
Yes,
and they will have a contractor, and they will have to work with all the tenants and everybody else, and we'll do our best to make sure they do that.
Right.
Yeah, state DOT, I guess. And maybe we can invite them, to your point, Erica. They can tell us the process. If we can get Craig to give us an update, we'll try. Maybe we can get them on the agenda. Do you know when that's scheduled for, Rob?
Mid-March.
Okay,
So
very
a month
soon.
from now.
All right, so maybe I'll reach out.
And we have asked them if they're going to have a community liaison and other things like that, because we know that all of these kinds of questions for each area, each business, each community board, et cetera, will be very real, and there'll be some pain associated with this.
Thank you. Mary, or actually Tammy first and then Mary, because I think she had her hand up before and put it down.
Well, you know, perfect timing, Noreen, because I was going to ask if there was a community liaison set up. And is the entirety of the bikeway from Chambers all the way up being done? That's one. Two, when we get a community liaison, can we have them come to the NAC and talk? I am concerned about the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. because those are the overnight hours that DOT approves, because they will take a look at it and say, well, that's okay, no problem. Nobody lives on the west side of the street, but there's residential housing on the entirety of the east side of the street, except for a couple locations. So it is a bit concerning. And I'd like to know if there's a map that comes out, if you can forward that, because we haven't had the notifications come to Community Board 1 at all yet. So thank you.
Yeah, we will share information. I mean, I've also been in touch with Craig to basically say, you know, I think we'll have a lot of questions about all of this. And I'm sure, you know, whether he comes directly or whether someone else who can explain all of this one by one to each geographic area, you know, I'm not sure what they're going to want to do, but we will reiterate the keen interest that people here have in understanding the details.
Yeah, I think it's important, considering many of us here, including myself, commute every day on it, but it seems like it's going to happen at night, but I still work late at night. But anyway, I am interested. Thank you, Noreen. And I do have Craig's email address. If I don't get in touch with him right away, I'll call you to nudge him, and maybe Tracy too has been so helpful. Okay.
Now, do we have any information yet? Soon, we've been promised, right?
Yeah, we have been promised. I think just the other day, maybe it was yesterday, I learned they're not repaving Pier 57 because that was done recently.
That's
Gansevoort,
Tony's point.
right? What's that?
Coordination between projects.
Right.
Pier
It's just
57
totally-
is the one area that absolutely needs to be repaved and redesigned. South of Pier 57 is a disaster. It has temporary bollards and it is a disaster there. And that's where, right before it's south, you're going in like little S's,
There's a
and
turn, yeah.
you have people walking on it. Just, you have people. It's a disaster right there. So if anything, that should be their main focus.
We don't disagree.
Personally, yeah, okay.
Um,
But that's another story for another discussion. As Mary.
Thanks. I just wanted to go back briefly to the safety grant from Congressman Nadler's office. Alan Oster can't be here because he's at a CB4 meeting. He specifically asked why this won't happen till fiscal year 25. So that's one question. Another is from what you already suggested it might be spent on, I'm guessing it is specifically for physical infrastructure and not something that you can spend on people, for instance, which is always a problem if it's limited anyway. But can you address those, please?
Yeah, it's not for people. It's a guess that it won't be, 2024 is not, I said FY 25, fiscal year 25, so not calendar year 25. I'm hoping that we can spend it in 2024. It's based on my own experience of multiple federal grants that we've gotten over the years where they have a very layered process of needing to look at things, but perhaps if it's something super straightforward, like lighting upgrades or whatever, that is something that they have a straight to go path. It's just a guess for me, but it's something where they have to make sure that there's no additional environmental reviews needed, like various other things that they have in their process. We've gotten a number of federal transportation grants over the decades, and usually it's a multi-step process.
Great. I'm going to take this opportunity of silence. I'm going to call on Connie if she can give us an update for Friends. If you're ready to wing it for us, Connie. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. We finished our 2022 volunteer program in about mid-December. It ran late because there was a lot of demand, and we're finally back up to pre-pandemic numbers for that. So we had 108 volunteer days last year, which was a record, working with our neighborhood gardeners, our Saturday green teams, and about 44 corporations doing community service days, many of them this year, multiple days per company. And we think this is part of a concerted effort for companies to try and use community service and other kinds of activities to encourage workers to be in the office and interact with their colleagues. So that popular program in particular has become very popular, and we are looking to increase our seasonal staff for 2023 so that we can expand into more than one group a day. Since we ran out of days, really the only way to do it is to double up. And so hopefully we'll be able to increase the number even farther. We're working with the trust on adding video and audio content to the new Bloomberg Connects app that Hudson River Park is on. I don't know how many have seen it, but it's very easy to download, and there are some terrific organizations in addition to Hudson River Park. We have been providing the staff help for making that happen. And so it sort of lives permanently in a way that you can manage the tech yourself and continue to add video and audio content to. As Rob Rodriguez mentioned, we're working on some grant applications with them. One to convert the maintenance and horticultural equipment from gas to electricity, others to supply new trees and shrubs to replace what's died in the off season or the past year. increase volunteering, which helps them obviously in the horticulture department, but also for composting, and working with the trust as well on increasing sponsorships and launching some new public relations resources for the 25th anniversary campaign. The Friends itself is also contributing an additional $400,000 to become a sponsor of the seasonal events, like we did last year for the anniversary. And on the fundraising side, holding small winter cultivation and in-home fundraising events during the off season. And then we're about 2.5 weeks away from our annual playground committee luncheon, which we hold at Chelsea Piers. So that was as fast as I could do it, Dan.
That was great. It was terrific. Any questions for Connie and friends? Well, thanks for giving us this impromptu report. Rob Rodriguez has offered to respond to Rob Pirani's question about 42nd Street. So Rob?
Yeah, we put this alert on our website when we learned of it just a couple of weeks ago. New York City DEP is replacing some manhole covers. They're tide gate covers that are actually located in the middle of the bikeway near the area of 42nd Street. And the work commenced actually today, this morning with mobilization, and will continue for about 6 weeks. They're hoping to get it done before that. The bikeway will be detoured during the construction onto that MTA bus lane that's immediately next to the bikeway there. It's right to the west. Due to the impact, MTA will be rerouting the bus routes at that location. And so there's a bit of a detour there. It's not closed, but you'll have to travel a little slower as you move through that area.
Well, that's great, Rob. It's nice to hear. Like, just put something in the chat and it's already being taken care of.
Yeah, thank you. So guys, I think we're going to skip water safety for now because we only have a few minutes left. I would like to give it over to our committee chairs to offer a report. And then I have a quick note about the next meeting and a little bit of homework assignments. So does anyone from committee, did they meet? I think safety did. Do you want to give us an update, Mary?
We did not end up meeting. I had put that grant out as a possible topic, and we decided that there wasn't anything for us to take action on until we knew some more. So we did not end up meeting, but we did exchange ideas and questions by email.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to report? If not, the DEC has agreed, Patrick Foster reached back out to me and has agreed to send someone to, it might be him, it might be someone else for our March 14th meeting, which is our usual second Tuesday of the month. And he's asked to make sure that he knows and can best answer our questions if we can provide our questions before he arrives so that he knows what he can answer and what he can't, rather than being a unproductive meeting. He wants to make it as productive as possible. So I will actually write to the entire council again, but if you can provide me questions in the next week or two, I'd love to give Patrick and the members at the DEC enough time to respond and provide an update on what's happening, as we know, up at 98, as well as their methodology for monitoring the Hudson River and its cleanliness. So any questions, you can just email me directly. You can email the entire council. You can just get them to me, and I'll be sure to present all the questions that are given to me. So that's your little homework assignment. And Tom, I'm sure you have a few questions, so we'll be sure to include. I might limit it to 5 questions per person, but that way we'll make sure that they can always say they can't answer it, but they can't say they didn't receive the questions. And thank you, Tracy, also, and Noreen, for giving them a nudge. I appreciate that. Well, thanks. It's 8:29. We have 1 minute of any other new business. Does anyone have any other new business to present? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Happy Valentine's Day.
That's right. That's right. We didn't have our meeting on the second Tuesday of the month to to celebrate Valentine's Day. So take advantage of that. Thank
I
you.
think we're getting good at this.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Aye.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Night all.
Good night.